Live from VentureX Studios, it's JP, Kathy, and the crew.
All right. Good morning and welcome to JP, Kathy, and the crew. Happy Monday to you. Hoping you had a lovely weekend and were able to spend it with family, friends, or just chillaxing yourself. Busy week ahead, real busy week, and we're very, very excited to have Dr. Clothier with us as we do every Monday. Very fortunate that he is a big part of the crew and has been, oh my goodness, for years now. So we're happy about that, but he's going to be talking to us. This is our first time with Dr. Clothier, who is the medical expert for JP, Kathy, and the crew. This is our first time with him since Governor Abbott lifted all the mandates. And we talked a little bit about that last week and what that looks like for school districts and businesses and individuals and what your thoughts are. People really kind of feel strongly both ways. And I mentioned to the crew that probably on my Facebook feed with the friends that I have, 50% are all in for still wearing masks. 50% are like, good, I'm just going to go to businesses that don't require it. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to be updating us on vaccines, and then hopefully we'll have enough time to discuss spring safety, because as everybody knows, it is either this week, next week, the following week are weeks for spring break for our elementary, middle school, junior high, high school, and college kids. So good morning, Dr. Clothier, and welcome to JP, Kathy, and the crew.
Well, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, it's been decades, I think, that I've been on. So
it seems like it.
but none of us have aged a bit, which is great.
Oh, isn't that fantastic?
Yeah, we do have a lot to talk about with the governor's order. And, most of the challenges I find, first, last year at spring break, you remember last March 13th, we closed down everything because cases spiked. And there was, so much concern about the spread of the virus. And I find it strange timing-wise that he would change to the ruling in the middle of spring break. It just seems very odd to me to pick what was clearly the spike time last year for the virus to open things up this year. And I think, odds are very good. Of course, we'll see another spike, and then we'll be faced with the issues. Do we shut down? Do we not? Do we just, let people be sick and die? And, those are problems, and that's the reality of it. And I think it's interesting that nearly everybody, in fact, I would actually say nobody I know in healthcare wants to see this happen, wants to see the masking go down. I mentioned a few weeks ago, and it's still a truth, that in Kansas, there was county by county, they could decide what to do about wearing masks. And the counties that still had masking or put in the mandate for the county to be in a mask had a reduction in COVID cases. And every county that opened up and had no mandate for a mask had an increase in COVID cases, just anecdotally. And that's, those are often very relatively sparsely populated areas, and they still had increases because of the lack of masking. So I'm concerned about an increase in cases. I actually had the unfortunate experience of a patient calling about 10 minutes after we sent out an email from my company that just said, we're going to follow the CDC guidelines and follow health recommendations rather than politics. And this person said, well, you're restricting my freedom and you're bowing to political pressure and I'm firing you, basically.
Wow.
And yeah, I find that really, at first it was probably just really reactive, but when you follow health recommendations, I think it's very different, honestly, than following what people perceive to be the problem of government regulations. And I might suggest, the analogy I made several months ago is that we have red lights at intersections or light signals. And, that really is for protection. If you have people just driving through the intersection, you'd have a lot more death and, mangled cars, mangled people. And that actually is run by the government. I don't know if people know that, but, that's a a regulation put in place, at least by local government, if not other, there are speed limits because of various safety restrictions. There are school zones that are put in place through governmental policy. And I think it's really strange that somehow people think that if there's a virus that we don't know the long-term outcome of, that people are so very upset that, the government would basically give guidelines on that. And I would say that we're not bowing to political pressure because they are doing what our freedom allows too, which is asking for people to wear masks so that our employees are protected. I really don't want our employees to be dying of the virus. And I don't want people coming in and spreading it, without any concern for others. I just find that to be a bit of a strange viewpoint.
Well, and Dr. Clothier, Dr. Clothier, I'm, and it's interesting because people are torn on this. And,
sure.
I'm of the mindset that I'm going to do, and I feel like I know best. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but I listen to you. I listen to some of the doctors that I go to.
That's nice.
And actually, we would try to take the doctor's advice when I can. But but in all seriousness, it's one of those things where I've always felt like the business owners, the people, everybody knows best. And so for some folks that might mean it's still wearing the mask, especially if you've got either yourself or a family member that has a compromised issue. Myself with severe asthma,
right.
I've got a breathing machine at home, so I can't mess around with that. And, but then again, I feel like individuals are smart enough to take care of themselves, take care of those around them. And then I'd also like you to kind of touch on schools, which it looks like there's still, at least I know Plano ISD, where my daughter's already graduated, but my son's still in Plano ISD. There's still business as usual with the guidelines. Same with School of Rock, where he plays the guitar in a couple of bands.
Sure.
They're still doing the same.
Yeah. That, like, for instance, my company is a healthcare oriented company, yes. Obviously. I think I would no sooner tape off all the sinks and say, oh, we don't wash hands here because we don't want to, be interfered with. We don't want to be slowed down. And I think, the challenge is if you come into my office with asymptomatic carriage of the virus and spread around, we have some people here as patients who are very susceptible to the virus and may very likely end up in the hospital or die if they get it. We have employees. Sometimes, there are some who have health concerns like asthma. Some may be pregnant and, they don't want to get the virus. We don't want them to get the virus. We want to protect that group. And I think that's very similar to school. There are some teachers with, diabetes or asthma, other syndromes. Maybe they've actually even been on chemotherapy for a cancer.
Right. Cancer survivors, what comes to mind with me there. You've got a lot of teachers who survive cancer, and as soon as they can, they're back in that classroom. God bless them.
Absolutely. They're committed. They're committed to the kids.
Right.
And so what we don't want to see is the kids bring in the virus and spread it because they are sending particles out into the air. And, the big concern still is not that if somebody's identified as sick, because they should stay out of the public arena and reduce spread that way. But it's the person who's about to be sick in 2 or 3 days that doesn't know it. And that's the challenge. And I think, it's really the right thing medically, health-wise, keep politics out of it to mask and reduce particulate spread. There's a reason this virus has spread like crazy around the world. And I will point out, it is around the world. It's not just a United States problem. It's not just a close by ISD problem. It's not just a Texas problem. It's around the world.
Right.
And, if you can't believe that there's a dangerous virus, I would suggest you start looking more at worldwide statistics on infection, hospitalization, debilitated states from chronic lung change that appears possibly permanent, heart issues that may be permanent, kidney issues that may be permanent, and even cognitive decline.
Yeah,
which
we don't know the long-term effects, and especially you hear of like the extreme fatigue that people are getting as a result of COVID. And I know somebody who's in their mid like 26, 27, healthy runner, ended up getting COVID. Oh my goodness, probably 6 months ago now. Still has lingering effects of that fatigue. Now we have a question, and this is a good question. If you
Right.
have, if you've already had and Randy, thank you for asking. If you've already had both shots, you're vaccinated. Why wear the mask?
Mhm. Because no one medical thing tends to ever be 100%. And there is a reduction of the infection in people with the shots of 95% with Pfizer, 94% with Moderna, 85% with the new Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Okay.
So those are all great numbers, but that leaves 5%, 6%, and 15% in that group who can still get the infection. And the challenge is so far, because the immunization was approved less than 3 months ago, the first one, the Pfizer one. We don't know whether people can carry the virus while their body is fighting off. The basic issue with an immunization is that it allows your body to have antibodies basically primed and ready. It's sort of like standing at your door waiting for somebody to get there. But if when that person comes to the door, you're ready. You're ready to jump up there, answer the door, and whatever. And so that is the immune response is ready to fend off the virus if you get it.
Right.
What we don't have data on yet is whether that virus lingers for a couple of days while you fight it and don't get it, and you therefore could spread it. And so you may still have viral particles, even though your body can fight them off wonderfully. They may still be, in your nasal passage, in your mouth, lung, throat area, and you could spew those out in normal talking, breathing, singing, whatever. And it's, obviously sneezing and coughing. So you still need that mask to cover until we have clear data that you don't spread the virus if it comes to the body.
Right.
My feeling, if you see that analogy of somebody coming in the door, if you decide you're not going to answer a door or they seem risky to you and you sort of drive them off the property, it still takes a few seconds, minutes, days, maybe, to get that out of the system and away off the property. And then keep in mind that's still a viral particle. And so that virus can still go out and basically invade someone else. So until we know more, and that's probably, I'm guessing, going to be 6 months of public widespread vaccine availability to see how much people possibly carry the virus,
right,
and or more. So we're still probably talking about June or July at the best to have enough people immunized that people who get basically assaulted by the virus won't be infected by it, but again, to also make sure that there's not spread. Now, there is early evidence that having even one of the 2-dose vaccines does reduce carriage of the virus and spread the virus, but that's very early and we can't rely on it yet.
Well, and again, everything's so new. We've got a couple more. We've got a comment and another question, and then I've got a follow-up question that might be something, and I don't know if you've heard of it, but I recorded a show on it last night that I haven't had a chance to watch yet that I want to ask you about. Nathan says, and this is where I'm coming from. He said, it's a choice. Be informed of your risk level or the level of your loved ones. He said, we're given a choice to wear a mask or not. If it works and you've got yours on, great. What are you worried about? We're simply opening back our economy. And I feel like that's a very accurate statement. And then we had a question from Elizabeth in Arizona. She said, so when does the doctor feel like we will not be wearing masks? Thank you so much. And so does that go, are you saying like June or July? Maybe a safer time?
To answer the second one first,
okay.
I think my best estimate, and I never said this if it doesn't turn out to be true, by the way, but my best estimate is that it'll be about, I think in June or July, we'll have enough percentage, a high enough percentage of people who are vaccinated and a high enough percentage of people who have had the virus and a better some degree of better understanding of what to do about the virus, probably by about June or July.
Okay.
Now, I could definitely see it extending all year just because we don't know yet if the, antibodies from the actual infection or the response to the vaccine really will have a lingering effect. That's pretty unclear.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have the challenge of mutations. Interestingly, so far, the mutations seem to help, the vaccine seems to help against most of the mutations they've been seeing. Some of them are so rare that it's hard to say.
Okay.
But
okay.
actual immunity may or may not help against the, like if you've had the virus and recovered, it may or may not help against some of the mutations. And that's purely because, you have antibodies against one form of the virus, not all of them. Whereas the vaccine is against the messenger RNA that allows the passage of the virus into the body cells.
Okay.
So,
for what it's worth,
I think the vaccine, I think everybody who can get the vaccine should get the vaccine.
Well, and what's interesting, so many of my friends, and I obviously have, been, Republican Party chairman here in Collin County, was elected as a Republican candidate to the county commissioner's court, have been in politics for 30 plus years. I lean very conservative, and the majority of my friends do, and acquaintances do, and Facebook friends do. But it's interesting how many of them who 6 months ago were like, hey, if they have a vaccine, no thanks, no way, no how, they're posting, just got my first or just got my second. And they're posting about it. So I think it's interesting. I think, whereas at first I thought, wow, I just don't think you're going to have as many folks getting this vaccine. I'm seeing folks who said 6 months ago, no way, no how.
And I'll take it.
And they're getting it anyways.
Yeah.
Why? Why is that?
And I believe me, I don't like government interference either. I believe very much in, freedom in America that, unfortunately we're kind of seeing whittled away, and I very much
yes,
agree.
And that's another topic for another day.
Yes. But here is the reason that you're seeing all those people get immunizations who 6 months ago said, no way. First is, back then we didn't have a vaccine, and so nobody knew anything about it.
Right.
Why would you say, it's like buying a car that's going to come out in 3 years. It's hard to commit to that when you know nothing about it. Now that it's being shown to be very safe, very effective, very valuable to people, that helps. But the real big reason, the reason that anybody who had a thought of I would never do this, is that 6 months ago, the virus hadn't hit somebody in their family or their friend circle. And now almost everybody knows somebody who has either been hospitalized with the virus, been sick in bed and fatigued for 2 to 10 weeks or whatever, or dead. And, if you have a family member who's died of the virus, all of a sudden it's very much more real. If you have a great friend that you have known since childhood and they've died from the virus, you suddenly realize, I think this is a little more real than just hearing on the news, there's a virus out there.
It becomes very personal. I know I'm up to, the other day I was counting people I either personally knew or who were very close family members with a dear friend of mine. I'm up to, close to 20 at this point, people. Now, that I've met all of them, but I know, I'm very close with their family, and they've had somebody in their family die. And it's pretty, and then also I know people who've been through it.
When it closes in around you, it's so much more real.
Right.
And getting a vaccine and having a sore arm for 24 hours is a lot better than being in the hospital for 5 weeks, on the ventilator for 2 weeks, and rehab for 2 weeks after that. Yeah. It's, it's just better. That's true. That's why I think people are getting a little more real about this. That's true. To me, it'd be, like choosing to cook family meal with a toxin. I don't think many of us do that. No. I hope. And
try not to.
I believe that when we become educated on something, we begin to actually take proper steps to ameliorate that. And I think it's just the idea the new virus was a new virus. It still is, but it was such a shock to everybody. Nobody knew what to do.
Right.
And, as we adjust, as we have vaccine, which, by the way, as we've discussed before, that technology goes back about 20 years. It's not like it got dreamed up one night in August in a lab somewhere. It's a proven method of vaccination. It just hadn't been placed into use until this virus. And that's what makes me grateful for the medical scientists who study things that we don't yet know are a huge problem, because they want to be ready in case it becomes a huge problem. This is a huge problem. We have so many who have been dead or who have died, or been debilitated by this. And, it's a really hard thing to be in the hospital for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, rehab, recovery at home. You're out of work. That will ruin your economy.
That's financially
I agree
devastating
with having
for
the
families.
economy strong. I love it.
Yes.
But I would love it if we had the economy strong without a virus killing people.
Yeah, and I want to, and obviously we're going to continue this discussion with you. I think we might have to save safety for next week. But I had a question. I saw something, and I recorded. I think it was 60 Minutes last night, and I don't know why something grabbed my attention. But then I read the description of what the show was going to be last night, and part of it was early studies on fluoxetine. I believe that's Prozac, the antidepressant, and treatment of COVID. Have you heard anything about that, or is that something you could research and let us know more about next week? I was fascinated.
I have a brief statement on that.
Okay.
It's interesting that many people have never really intersected with the medical scientist realm, because all that research happens in the background. Most people don't think about it. They talk about what good products are around, or they hate products that are around, whichever,
Right.
But one thing that medical scientists do is just to try things that are practical, and things that are practical, they're already around and inexpensive and readily available.
And that's one of those that is correct.
Yes. It's been around for, 30 plus
Long
years.
time,
it's cheap
Yep.
and, it's plentiful. We have a supply. So what they've done as medical scientists is take the virus and see what can inhibit it, or cause recovery, or trigger a better immune response, or, a host of other things. So I can guarantee you they've tried probably, dozens and dozens and dozens of products to see what can help. And, there was early word about a couple of products out there on the market that the president had mentioned at the time that had, no evidence. It really hasn't panned out to be particular change to people with the virus. There are animal products, veterinary products that have been, selected to be possible help. There were early thoughts about antivirals, and of interest, a couple of other products like fluoxetine show some hope in triggering some degree of better recovery.
Right.
We don't have all numbers yet, but it's kind of interesting to follow that, because who would think you would try a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor that works in the brain to see if it can help with the virus. And, I just appreciate the fact that those medical scientists have that desire to find something helpful, and researchers in general. And so we'll see what the research shows with time. I would still not jump on any bandwagon of, this is going to cure it. We also thought zinc would help prevent spread, and vitamin C may help. And, vitamin C is one of those things that everybody wants to have helpful.
Right.
But it just hasn't been. It just shows no particular evidence of recovery.
Well, we've gone through since you and JP and I have been talking about this for almost actually a year now, and especially we're coming up on spring break was really when the kids didn't go back to school after spring break. And then they didn't go back to school. And that's when it really hit home, and we started talking about this on a weekly basis. But think of all of the different things. We've talked about vitamin D. We've talked about elderberry. We've talked about all of these different things, different antibiotics. But again, it does. You have to be very grateful that you've got researchers out there that are literally, when I heard about it, it's like fluoxetine, antidepressant, they are flipping every single rock. And that's good. That's good
everybody
for us.
Wants to find a cure, and everybody wants to see reduced spread. And, it's really not a political deal. And I just want to leave with the thought that, I think all of the politicians, whether local, state, national, or even international spokespeople, I think their best bet would be to prop a doctor out front of them and say, listen to the doctor on medical ideas about the virus.
Right.
If it works out, that's great. They could say, I picked the right doctor for you to listen to. If it doesn't work out, they could say, oh, that sorry doctor didn't know anything. We'll get another one out there and see. And that way it keeps the politics a step back. And that then we wouldn't have people angry about a shift or a change there, because it really wouldn't be political. It'd really be the medical reality. And I think, I occasionally see somebody diagnosed with a breast cancer, doesn't believe they have a breast cancer, and they'll spend months or weeks, kind of getting different opinions and trying different things. And, and then sooner or later, the reality hits. Hey, this is real.
This is real.
Yeah. And I feel like that's how we've been as a society with the virus. At first it's kind of, it's just political, or it'll go away the day after the election, or, all those things. And that's just not the case. It's a very real virus, and it's very potent, and it's very contagious. Whatever we can do to help reduce the contagion of it, I think would be the best thing for society in the long run.
Well, thank you, Dr. Clothier. As always, fantastic information. And again, this is you are smart. Members of the crew are smart. Take this and you determine what's best for you and your family with the information you're given by an expert, by a medical expert in particular, like Dr. Clothier. And we appreciate you. And then next Monday, let's definitely cover some spring break and spring safety. Anything that has
to. Because there are other things that happen in life.
It's crazy like that. We're, and especially this time, especially when you've got spring break coming up, you've got kids at home, you've got kids back from college, just what are the ramifications? And I always like to say, if it starts out with here, hold my beer, or hey, watch this, probably not a good idea.
Yes. Just be careful, be observant.
Yes.
And, really try to protect those around you. Really try to do to others what you would like them to do to you. You probably don't want the virus brought to you so that you can spend time in the hospital relaxing. But you also, don't want to make other family members sick. So just, be cautious.
Be smart. Well, thank you, Dr.
Have a great
Clothier.
week.
You have a blessed week, and we will see you next Monday. Thank you so much.
Very good.
All
right.
Goodbye. Well, some great information from Dr. Clothier. And, Nathan, he mentioned in one of his comments, Nathan, who's a member of the crew, mentioned about having the opening up of the economy is, at least from what I can read of your comments, Nathan, I believe you're saying what an important thing that is. And I agree. And I've talked to a number of people who are leaders or business owners in the service industry that has been just annihilated. And so I think as a result of people, the governor opening Texas back up completely. So, here's my thing, and we will talk more about this with our guest who's about to come on, Lathan Watts of First Liberty. He'll have to put on his musician entertainer hat for this question. But, I think about concerts, and it's coming up on a year since and this is just my family. My kids love concerts. My husband and I love concerts. I've said this before. I'd rather go to a great concert than go on a 3-day vacation. To me, that is a vacation. That is a life experience that I'll always have those memories of. And we're almost coming up on the year anniversary of when my husband and I went and saw the Eagles in concert. Which, boy, howdy! If you've not seen the Eagles in concert, I highly recommend that whenever they come back around. I would be willing to go to a concert because you're there 3 or 4 hours, or at least a couple of hours. If I had to wear a mask to get back into, oh my goodness, I almost said Reunion Arena. It's not Reunion Arena. American Airlines Center. Oh my gosh, I almost said Reunion Arena. It's gone. That's how old I am. Thanks. But if I had to put on a mask to go and watch a band I love for 2 hours, as much as I hate the masks, I would suck it up just to do that. And again, that's a business industry that opens back up and is tons of revenue. I mean, you can spend as much as you spend on a vacation going to a good concert. So anyways, just be smart about it. I think Dr. Clothier has a very conservative approach. I think just be smart about it. You know what's best for your family. Thankfully, Governor Abbott's giving you that choice. And I think a lot of, I can imagine, my guess, the majority of businesses, at least at first, I know schools and places where kids, and like I said, I've got Plano ISD and Plano School of Rock as two examples in my life right now where with the kids, because they're in close proximity, protocols with the masks and all that kind of stuff, taking temperatures, is all still going to be in place. So it'll be interesting. And we've got Lathan Watts in studio. How are you?
How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. We always love it when Lathan Watts of First Liberty is on. Tons of stuff to catch up with if we haven't had you on for a few weeks. So tons of stuff as far as religious liberties. Also, the impact of Governor Abbott's lifting the mandate on churches. I saw several of my friends now, and I myself, I've done online church the majority of this time, with the exception of a Catholic mass that was at St. Mark's, where I've gone and where my kids went to school. And then also Christmas Eve, we went to Cottonwood Baptist Church. But other than that, it's been church at home. And it's interesting, this weekend on social media, I saw tons of folks who were like, hey, I'm back at church. So let's kind of talk about those, and we always do this with Lathan. So at first he comes in here with his First Liberty hat on and talks about religious freedom, and especially religious freedom as it, coincides with COVID, because I still haven't understood how certain businesses open, but then church, where you can socially distance at most of them, you can wear a mask, you can sit just with your family. Presentation of the gifts at the Catholic Church, instead of a family or some kids bringing it up, even at the funeral that we're having in my family tomorrow, that's not a choice for us as to which family members bring up the gifts to the altar because of COVID. The priest already has those prepared ahead of time. So anyway, welcome, Lathan, and let's talk about updates in California. What does it mean? What does it mean for churches in Texas? What are your thoughts on what's going on?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see is that specifically here in Texas, since the governor has sort of said, look, there's not going to be a state mandate.
Right.
Churches will make those decisions on their own.
Right.
Where I've gone to church for close to, 20 years now. We started out when everything was really locked down, doing just
online.
Just online. Then we were slowly sort of trying to get back to normal.
Right.
So we had they split the congregation, or they divided the congregation sort of alphabetically by last name. So if you were the second half of the alphabet, you come in the morning.
Yep.
The first half, you come, in the evening. They cleaned everything in between. Families sat together as family units.
Exactly.
Different pews marked off. Everybody, wear your mask. We're now at the point, I think they're still doing kind of two services.
Right.
But once you're in and seated with your family, you can take the mask off.
Oh, okay. Like a restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
About like a restaurant. So, but what we, at First Liberty were dealing with this entire time was making sure that government was treating the church on equal footing with secular organizations. So if you've got, a county judge that says, well, Walmart, you can have 50, 60% capacity.
But churches
can have 50 people.
Yeah. Or none,
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. You got to be neutral.
Right.
If you're going to treat business one way, you got to treat
right.
church the same way. And we've been, successful. Thankfully, we haven't lost a case on that issue.
I was going to say, y'all are 100%. Y'all have just knocked it out of the park. And again, First Liberty, and you can go on the First Liberty website and donate, because you guys run strictly off donations.
That's correct.
You do not charge your clients for these cases that you fight. And during COVID, y'all have had huge success.
Yeah, we have not lost a case on that issue. We
That's
filed
fantastic.
the very first lawsuit in the country back almost a year ago now, I guess, because it was around Easter.
Isn't that crazy?
When it started.
That's right, yeah.
And it really sort of set the tone, because as much as this word has been completely overused, it was unprecedented. There was not a case on this pandemic, on this issue.
Right.
And so we filed the very first one, and were successful. And that kind of, set the tone. And then as restrictions changed and churches were trying to comply with them, you had, overzealous bureaucrats. Churches, some started doing like parking lot church, where you had people would stay in their cars in the parking lot, and the pastor would be out
with a
with
PA
bullhorn
system.
or sometimes on AM radio, so they could just tune to the right station. And we had a little church in Greenville, Mississippi, that was doing that, and the police showed up to write tickets to every car in the parking lot,
which is just.
They even told the pastor, because he said,
crazy.
"Hey, we're in compliance. We're not. They're not even rolling their windows down."
Right.
And don't we have a First Amendment right? One of the officers
you
actually
can
said,
go through a line at Whataburger or Chick-fil-A where it's usually double wrapped around the building in your car with your car rolled down, but you can't sit in a church parking lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the officers actually told the pastor, "Well, those rights have been suspended during the pandemic."
That's nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Constitution much? Yeah.
So our response was pretty much, "Well, we'll just see about that."
Yeah. Okay. Let's see if those rights are suspended.
And it turns out they weren't. So.
And another win for First Liberty. Yeah.
They quickly changed course, but thankfully now, hopefully we're coming. It's kind of like Churchill said, it might not be the end, might not be the beginning of the end, but it might be the end of the beginning.
Churchill had some of the best quotes.
He's one of my all-time favorites.
I love him.
As things start to open up now, and certain states have said, look, there's no more state mandates. As you said before, if a private business owner still wants to require that for you to come into his business, that's his right as a business owner. So
and then you make the choice.
Exactly.
For example, with School of Rock, I understood because the kids, they're there for at least 2 hours. They're, you're in a band, which we're hoping we can see Lathan again, and we'll be advertising whenever his band's out and about and playing again. And I'm starting to see more and more restaurants that were also, concert venues open up, and people are able to go and see who they want to see. But it's one of those things that, okay, I have to make that choice as a parent. Boy, would I love for my son and all his buddies to be able to go in there without a mask and just business as usual, drink out of the water fountain, parents sit in the lobby and listen, because sometimes that's the only way your kid will let you hear him play, and then, but then I've got to also look at, okay, this has been a lifeline for my son as far as mental health is concerned, a way to communicate. So if they're going to still require masks, to me, and plus, I think the younger generation, they didn't have that apprehension to the mask. They're just like, oh, it's the rule, okay, So, you make that personal decision as a family, as a parent, as an individual, and businesses. And I would imagine some of these service industries, Lathan, that are about to open back up because of Governor Abbott lifting these mandates. They're probably going to do it safely because they don't want to be shut down for 2 weeks if somebody on their staff has, ends up with COVID. So I can maybe walk into a restaurant now without a mask, which always kind of made me crazy. Like, put the mask on
until you
table of two, sit down.
Yeah.
Okay, how did
cheeseburger?
And then I'm sitting there for an hour and a half, drinking a martini and eating an appetizer and staying for dessert with no mask on. But I get it if the servers, if I'm a business owner, I'm probably going to have my servers because they're in close contact with other servers.
At some point, it has to become an assumption of risk.
Yes.
Approach. Like, if you go out in public, if you go into a public venue, you understand there's risk involved. Some people will take that risk, others won't. And that's up to them. And the people who are willing to do it understand that there's a risk to themselves. There's a risk to people that they care about who might be in one of those vulnerable demographics. And so you got to make that decision for yourself. But
and I love that. That just is such a beautiful sound of freedom. You make that decision for yourself. Just like I know what's best for my kids as far as school, as far as all the, I know what's best for my household for certain decisions. The government doesn't.
Right.
They just don't.
I mean, government is very, it's very difficult for government at any level to make a policy that can be applied to each and every individual situation. I mean, you think like government has...
You would have 9 billion policies just in one city.
It's almost by nature, you have to make a big, broad decision if
Right.
it's coming from the government, which is why it's best not to have government make a decision that's so broad that affects everybody.
Right.
Because they can't take into account every individual situation.
Right. Well, and
So-
now there are exceptions, and Dr. Clothier always mentions this because he is a proponent of still wearing masks and he's saying maybe June or July, a lot of people will be vaccinated, a lot of people will have had the virus. That would probably be a safer time. And you know what? If you want to listen to him, great. If you don't, hey, you do what the businesses you're choosing to go into say. But he always uses the analogy, there's a reason that there's a speed limit and everybody can't just drive 100 miles an hour. Or there's a reason that there are stoplights and when you see red, you stop at a stoplight. So there are some decisions that are kind of universal in our country that we've accepted, but that are for the kind of I don't know, the greater good. Gosh, I don't know if that's really the term I want to use. But you know what I'm saying? There's certain things that there are rules you follow. Okay, so be it. But something that is a very personal choice, which is your health. I don't know. I see that differently. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, me personally, yes, I see it differently. Yes, of course, we have speed limits. We have generally applicable laws.
Right.
We're still talking about, a disease. And here, this is the world according to Watts. This is
me.
as
First Liberty hat is off for now.
You're still talking about a disease that is the most dangerous to people of a certain age or who have an underlying health condition.
Right.
If you're not in that category, which is the vast majority
right.
of the population, or not in either one of those categories, is it fun to get it? No. Is it life-threatening? Probably not. Unless you're in one of those categories.
And if you're in one of those categories, and sometimes
or you have someone like that in your household, then
you're going to be very different.
You do need to make different decisions than everybody else.
Yeah, JP just talked about last week. His dad has several underlying medical conditions, very severe life-threatening issues, and so JP and his dad both went and got the first vaccination last week, and he said, that's what's best for my dad. We're going to go back for the second one. He said he will probably, especially since he still spends a lot of time in schools, he will probably mask up, and probably it will be required in those schools. But he said he would do that anyways, just until we're a little bit further into people getting vaccinations, because he doesn't want to bring anything home to his dad. So, but he can come to that conclusion on his own.
Exactly.
Because
that's specific to his family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's my personal opinion should have been in the approach all along.
Yep.
I understand that people want to feel like they have some sort of control over something that maybe there's really not that much control over.
Right.
Like a virus.
Right.
I mean, there's a certain level of a virus is going to do what a virus is going to do.
Right. Right.
Okay. Yes, you can take measures to try to help stop or slow the spread, but
sometimes it's kind of luck of the draw. Do you know people who, I'm sure you know, I've got friends and some family members who literally working from home, barely going out, having stuff delivered.
Just talked to a friend of mine who his parents had not left their house in a year.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
This past Sunday, they were going to church for the first time because they've been vaccinated.
Right.
They wouldn't even let him in their house to bring them like Thanksgiving lunch. I mean, they were
very strict about it.
And he and I were talking, and it's like, you know what? Okay, if that's your thing. But to me, and again, this is just me, there is a fate worse than death. And to me, not living is worse than dying.
It's the mental health component of it that comes into play.
And I think that has been severely underreported or has not been attended to, with all of the restrictions on church and our approach is that, well, look, spiritual health is a part of health. I mean, there's a
Absolutely.
There's a reason you look at all of these other things that are statistically going up through the roof.
Right.
Mental health issues, addiction issues, suicide attempts, especially amongst young kids.
Younger, and that's what's so horrific. All of those spousal abuse. You look at all the statistics. I think, and this is just world according to Kathy, I think the mental health devastation from this pandemic is going to far outweigh. And again, now if I like to get my nails done, if my nail salon still says you've got to wear a mask, okay, I'll suck it up for an hour. But it's one of those things that you've got to look at that. The families that have not seen other family members, except for maybe waving through a window, for over a year. And what happens if one of those family members dies of natural causes or a heart attack or something? I think, in my family, and, Jerry, who my mom, that was the love of her life, her soulmate for 33 years, a father figure to my brother and I, a grandfather to my kids. Now, when we saw them, everybody was masked, had their masks on. We did birthdays a little bit different. We went to places where we could have a big, area to spread out because, we've got a big family. And I sit here and think, if I had missed, but then they came over to my house and celebrated with me and the kids and everything for Christmas, and we had a great time. I just think if we would not have seen him this past year and then he would have died as a result of the lack of electricity during the storm, I can't imagine not having seen somebody who was so near and dear to me. That would be far more devastating than me being in a hospital on a ventilator with COVID. It just would be, because that's an emotional thing, and that's you don't get that time back.
Exactly.
And we had, you and I had a dear friend, and I wanted to mention this on the show too, and since you're in, and I know you were friends with him, Clyde Siebman, just an iconic person in the Republican politics, was a Republican Party chairman in Grayson County, went on to be a judge, just a great man who served so many people, died of a heart attack at 62. You're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Exactly.
You're just not. Yeah. So what do you see businesses doing? And this is, again, World According to Watts.
Yeah.
That sounds like the name of a really good show. Love it. So what do you think businesses, and especially you're a musician, y'all haven't had any gigs yet, and you were playing on a pretty regular basis, playing and singing. So what do you see those things, those opportunities opening back up? What do you think businesses will do?
Yeah, I hope so.
Here in Texas.
Yeah, I think there's, depending on the venue. If you've got a lot of seating and you can space people out and maybe not seat as many as you normally would to allow some space, I think businesses will start to do that. But again, I think eventually you're going to have to get back to sort of the assumption of risk theory. Hey, look, we want you here. You want to be here. You understand there's risks involved. We all do. Okay, let's have a band play. And let's have people out here outside. Indoors versus outdoors might be a little bit different.
Outdoors, if you're socially distanced, don't need a mask.
Yeah, I think you'll start to see that now, especially with Governor Abbott saying I'm not mandating anything on you. I'm going to leave it up to you. I think I'm hopeful because I miss playing, and I miss going to hear other people play.
And again, that's part of that mental health. And you cannot take away the first of all, you can't take away people's opportunity to make a living for their family and live the American dream, which it's so heartbreaking. We've seen, especially a lot of family restaurants that were just that one restaurant that maybe was owned 3 generations and gone.
And not coming back.
No, just not. And you see things being changed. So, something I wanted to ask you about. I heard a story on this morning with the stimulus packet coming out. A big old chunk of that, like I'm thinking $1 billion. Don't quote me on that. Somebody from the crew let me know what the number is. But a big chunk of that money is going to the airlines. And I wonder, do the airlines ever come back? And my guess is no, that they don't ever come back to the number they were at prior to COVID, Because here's the thing, now that you're able to do a Zoom meeting with somebody, over in Europe, and you don't have to travel there, or hey, I can do a Zoom meeting with a person in California and a person in Florida and a person in Kentucky all at the same time. I think companies are seeing where you can streamline and save money on the bottom line.
That makes sense to me. I think there will be business travel might not come back to what it was before, just for all the reasons that you said. But there are some things that you cannot put a value on being able to sit across a table from the person and hash something out, face to face.
Yep. And then go out to lunch, and that's where you have the really good ideas.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to completely go away, but as a cost-saving measure, and people have adapted.
Right.
And so, business travel. I certainly haven't traveled as much, in the past year as I typically did. For First Liberty, although I'm starting to now. So businesses are going to have to adjust.
Right.
Whether or not, again, the world according to Watts, whether or not I want the government picking which industries are the really important ones.
That's what struck me. And I'm not, and this is nothing. I know the airline business has taken a hit. I've got friends of mine. A girlfriend who had to take early retirement, was a lifetime flight attendant, loved it, was making a great living. Husband's a pilot, took early retirement. Mm-hmm. But then I also know tons of people in the restaurant industry, in the hotel, and the kind of that service industry that have literally just been gutted.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how do we pick and choose which industry's been hit the hardest?
Which is why typically folks on our end of the spectrum are saying we don't want the government deciding.
Right.
Right. If you want the economy back, lift the restrictions and let people get back to work. That's the best way you can benefit somebody who's out of work, is let them go back to work.
Right.
Not send them a monopoly money check for $1,400. Because let's be clear, as long as we're talking politics, we don't have this money. No, $28 trillion.
Where is the money coming from?
In debt.
And people do need financial help.
Of course.
But where is it? I would like to have one of those money trees in my backyard.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I lost some shrubbery and maybe a couple of trees from the freeze.
Certainly.
I will plant one of those in my backyard. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
Where do we get that, federal government?
Yeah. So it sounds like an oversimplification, but you really have to make a decision at some point. Is the remedy becoming as harmful as what the disease?
Right.
Right. Or do, as some countries in Europe did, yes, they took some precautions, but they never really shut anything down and just sort of let things take their course. And that is not to minimize the threat, to the lives and the people who have lost
and
their
it's
lives
real.
over it.
We
totally
know that.
that.
We know that. We get it.
It's an approach that acknowledges that there are certain things that we cannot control.
Right.
And you do what you can, and you face it, and you get through it.
Right, exactly.
All you can do.
Well, and the great thing about Americans is, we're able to persevere. I think people being able to physically go back into their church again, even if you still choose to do online, which I've really enjoyed with my puppy. First time my dog's been able to go to. I've had a dog that was able to go to church. I think you're going to see more people even just getting back in for a Bible study, or go off for a weekend, religious retreat. And those are things, like you said, that they fuel your soul. That's part of that spiritual component, and not just in the Christian world, in all aspects of religion. Everybody's
a lot of the
been
cases
hurting.
that we had to intervene in during the pandemic. Several of them were on behalf of the Orthodox Jewish community in New York, where you had Governor Cuomo, threatening.
Well, that's a whole nother topic for another day. Yeah,
I think his term was involuntary quarantine.
Well,
what does involuntary?
What does that
quarantine
mean?
Like, we're going to come get you and quarantine you. Where are you going to put them?
Well, they even had the governor of New York City, de Blasio, didn't he have a thing where call and report your neighbor if you see them out and somewhere they're not supposed to be, or they're not socially distancing, or they're not wearing a mask. And remember what his voicemail line got filled up with.
Yeah, exactly.
Some very, very interesting comments and conversations. Because so what are we supposed to be? The land police and narc on your neighbor? Who's gonna be that person?
Yeah, and especially when you start talking about our clients up there in the Orthodox Jewish community, and you start using terms like that, and we're going to involuntarily quarantine these folks. Call if you see turning these people. I mean, what does that sound like to you? If you know anything about history, what do you
if I'm a
Jew
Jewish
in New
individual,
York?
I'm thinking, my goodness, we've got Hitler coming all over again.
And
I saw. I mean,
So yeah, that's been a lot of our work up there during
and
the
thank
pandemic.
goodness y'all been successful
dealing with that. Yes,
thank goodness for that community. Well, thank you. Okay, so how do people get in touch with Liberty, First Liberty, and if they, and also you do speaking engagements as well.
Certainly.
And let me tell you, Lathan is a phenomenal speaker. He speaks on a regular basis to my particular Republican Women's Club. So how do they get in touch with you? How do they get a speaker from First Liberty? And how can they donate, most importantly?
FirstLiberty.org. That's our main website. If you need our help, there's a tab at the top that says Get Legal Help. It's a real simple form for you to just kind of tell us what's going on, and then part of our legal team get back in touch with you. If I haven't dissuaded you from inviting me to speak with my appearance here this morning.
And he'll have his First Liberty hat on.
Yeah, exactly. You can on the website under the our legal team. There's the whole team there, and you can click on my picture, and there's a link where you can request a speaker. And I'm happy to come do it and talk about our cases. We just recently re-argued Coach Kennedy's case at the Ninth Circuit.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
We're now waiting on the Ninth Circuit's opinion.
And the second we hear anything, and it may be a while.
It probably will.
But please, we want you on immediately, because that's a case that we've been following on the show through you.
I mean, that case has been going on
years.
for close to 6 years now. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully. We just got to figure out if it's a train or not.
Yeah, I was going to say that we've got to pray, and from your lips to God's ears it's a good outcome there.
So that we're waiting on the Ninth Circuit's opinion there, and as soon as we've got that, then we'll know it's either a win for Coach or a chance to go back to the Supreme Court. We just argued a case in the 11th Circuit where this one's kind of, it's like, really? What's First Liberty doing representing a former congressman who was convicted on fraud charges? U.S. versus Corinne Brown, who she was a congresswoman who was convicted on fraud charges. But during her trial, one of the jurors mentioned to another juror that he had prayed, asked God to help him, make a good decision, believed that the Holy Spirit had guided him to the right decision, and that apparently freaked out one of the other jurors, and they asked the judge. The judge disqualified the juror for saying that. Now, when you take an oath to be a juror, that oath ends with the words, "So help me God." That's what this juror did. He asked God for help, believed he got it, and said so, and was kicked off the jury. So our position, and the reason we took it,
when I read about that, I was like,
you should not be able to dismiss a juror for that.
No.
Corinne Brown deserves a new trial because that impacted the trial. The new trial may result in the same verdict. Okay,
and that's not the point here.
Matters. In the American justice system, process matters.
So that means if you're a juror, in any case, anywhere, then if that's allowed to go on, then as a person of faith, I can't even sit there. Okay, and I'm Catholic. Before I pray and after I pray, I do the sign of the cross. So does that mean I can't even say a silent prayer to myself sitting there in the jury room, do the sign of the cross? Can somebody say, "Oh, that's religious, get her out"?
Exactly. I mean, what it comes down to is, does the oath mean anything or not?
Yeah.
Can you really? Do we just say "So help me God," but we don't really want his help? Because if you ask for it and think you got it, we might dismiss you from the jury.
Yeah.
It's a much bigger issue, honestly, than.
And where is that case right now?
We just argued that at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay.
So we got to wait on the 11th Circuit's opinion, and we'll know. Either they decide for us, and she probably gets a new trial. If they go against us, then we'll appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
So, which, interestingly enough, when the Supreme Court enters their chamber, they are greeted with the sound of a crier saying, "God save the United States and this honorable court."
Yes. So either that's part of us, or it's not. Now, and I pray it continues to be part of us and who we are. That's our founding fathers, wrote that into the fabric of the Constitution. It's just it's part of America. And the great thing is, like you've said before, and I think this is so important, this protects the person who wants to go to church, who wants to, be able to pray, be it at a restaurant or a football game or in a jury room. That also protects the person who's an atheist or
Absolutely.
who doesn't believe or who's secular
Agnostic,
secular humanist. Yeah. It protects all religious freedom, which includes the freedom to not have a religious conviction.
It boils down. Jefferson called it the right of conscience.
There you go.
So
yep.
if you're a person of faith, that's typically informed by your faith.
Right.
If you're not, you still have a set of ideas that you want to live your life by,
yep.
and you have the right to do so.
Right.
And you have to protect both of those.
Right.
If you have the right to live according to what you believe, so does the person of faith. And you got to find a way to peacefully coexist.
Right.
And that's what a lot of our cases end up dealing with, is when certain things come into conflict, you have, as a people, as a country, and under the Constitution, you have to be able to say, yes, this person can do that.
Right.
You may not like it. It may not be how you would choose to do it, but they can.
And
because if they can't, then you can't.
And I tell you, yeah,
I
I know that so many people hear, oh, well, this case is in court, and this individual is a Christian, or this individual is Jewish, or this individual is Buddhist, and I'm just not into any of that. The person who's not into any of that literally needs to be almost more fearful than those of us who are into it, because we're going to take our faith and, hey, and if I have to do the sign of the cross where nobody notices it in a jury room, I'm doing it. I'm going into the bathroom and doing it, or whatever.
You just have to ask yourself, what opinion of yours or what thing that you want to live your life by is culturally okay right now, but could be unpopular in the future.
Yeah.
Because that's the First Amendment exists for all of the clauses in the First Amendment, where they're dealing with religion or speech or all of those. It's the unpopular idea that really needs the most protection.
Absolutely.
And there are, tenets of faith that cross several major religions on certain issues that are culturally unpopular right now.
You're correct.
You may not adhere to those. That's your right to do so.
Right.
But what is the next thing that becomes culturally unpopular that might be something that you do believe in? Because if you want that protected, you have to protect these people of faith.
You do.
Whose opinions or not really opinions, convictions on certain issues are culturally unpopular right now.
Right.
That's what the First Amendment exists.
And I hope people hear you loud and clear. And I know, and you say that almost every time you're on this show. We need to continue to say that. Okay, so let's look 50 years into the future. All of a sudden, you have a federal government, and then all the and then the powers that be at the heads of the state decide, you know what? You cannot no longer be agnostic. You can no longer be atheist. Everybody must declare their religious choice, and you've got 5 to choose from. Let's say they whittle it down, and you've got, or even if you've got 20 to choose from, you are no longer allowed to be have a driver's license, work at a job where, federal income tax is taken out. You can't do anything anywhere unless you declare being an atheist and being agnostic are not on the list. So at this point, if I'm one of those people, I'm cheering on what's going on in the Jewish Orthodox community and what y'all are doing in New York, and I'm cheering on what y'all are doing in California to make sure those Christian churches are open. It's a slippery slope.
It is, and people, some people tend to always kind of denigrate the slippery slope argument, and then a few years later, the things that you said were on that slippery slope show up.
Yeah.
Really what it comes down to is you have. We're founded on the idea that there is an authority higher than government. Right. And that's where ultimate accountability and allegiance
absolutely
has to be, because that's where the rights come from.
Exactly.
If you accept the notion that the rights are granted by government, then you accept the notion that the government can take them away. And the founders wrote,
be careful what you ask for, be careful what you wish for.
On the idea that
yes,
government exists. The sole purpose of government is to protect the God-given rights of the people.
Right.
That's why we have government, not to tell us what the rights are or how to live by them.
Right. So true. Well, great information. Thank you so much, Lathan. We love it when you come in. FirstLiberty.org, and it's just that easy, and go check it out. Okay, as we're closing out in Chambrielle, I saw this, and we're so glad Chambrielle, Bree, the intern, is back in studio. Okay, so she and I are big fans of Bath and Body Works. Okay, love it. Like, when they have the 60% or 75% sale, we're like, oh, were you there? Oh, I was there, Okay, in Arizona, Bath and Body Works turns into a slugfest between customers and employees. A massive brawl, of course, caught on camera. Watch what you do. Somebody's videotaping you everywhere. Caught on camera over the weekend between a customer and a Bath and Body Works employee in Arizona's Fashion Square Mall has gone viral. Footage of the incident taken on Saturday begins with a woman fighting with a female employee before another employee joins in. Tackling the customer to the ground, the woman shouts, "Let me go," as another customer and two staffers rush over to intervene. The group can be seen fighting on the ground, screaming at each other, pulling hair, before a male staffer grabs one of the women and pushes her towards the door, saying, "Please get out now." The man forcibly pushes the woman involved in the initial tussle out the door, repeating, "Out now." The woman tells the male staffer to stop touching her, says she isn't leaving until she gets her purse, before being ushered out of the store. As of Sunday evening, the video had, and of course, and this is just as of last night, I'm sure it's through the roof now, 173,000 likes and 30,000 retweets. And somebody, they were just saying that this was like over a whole situation where they got in a fight over a product. Wow.
Look, when you get down to that last bottle of sun-ripened raspberry, things get real. Okay?
He has 2 daughters and a wife. So I love it that it got really real here. I saw something like, is that, you can't make this stuff up. So there you go. So be careful and just know cameras are recording you everywhere you go. All right, everybody have a blessed day. We'll see you in a couple of days. We wish JP and his dad safe travels on the road as they head back to Arizona this morning. Just love y'all. God bless y'all. And we will see you Wednesday. Thanks. Oh, stay tuned. 10 o'clock for Heart and Soul of Texas Women. Have a great, really inspirational Christian guest on today. So Lisa and I look forward to seeing you in a couple hours. Take care. Thanks, Lathan. Thanks, Bree.